Steelers Nation, stop everything. We just got some absolutely wild news out of the National Football League that's going to shake up the entire quarterback landscape for the next year. And yes, this directly impacts the Pittsburgh Steelers and their plans at the most important position in football. Before I tell you what just went down, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. This is exactly the kind of breaking news that could change everything for our black and gold. And if you're not subscribed, you're going to miss the next big move when it happens. Trust me, you don't want to be the last person to know when the Steelers make their next franchise-altering decision. So smash that subscribe button, and let's dive into this absolute chaos that just unfolded today. Here's what happened. Ian Rappaport just dropped a bombshell report earlier today that the National Football League has officially informed all 32 teams that they will not be holding a supplemental draft this year. Now, if you're thinking, okay, Jack, what does that mean for the Steelers? Hold on, because this gets really interesting really fast. This decision means that former Texas Tech and Cincinnati quarterback Brendan Sorsby, the guy who's been at the center of one of the biggest scandals in recent college football history, will not be able to enter the NFL for the entire 2026 season. He's basically been frozen out, locked out of professional football for an entire year, and the ripple effects of this decision are absolutely massive. Let me back up and give you the full context here because this story is absolutely insane from start to finish. Brendan Sorsby was a quarterback who played for Cincinnati last season. He wasn't just some random backup either. This guy had legitimate NFL potential. Big arm, big body, the kind of physical tools that NFL scouts drool over. There were whispers throughout the league that Sorsby could be a steal in the supplemental draft, with some teams reportedly willing to give up significant draft capital to take a chance on him. And yes, the Pittsburgh Steelers were absolutely part of that conversation. We'll get to that in just a minute because the Steelers connection here is fascinating. But here's where everything went completely off the rails. It came out that Sorsby had been placing thousands, and I mean thousands, of sports bets while he was a college athlete. Now that alone is a massive violation of NCAA rules. College athletes absolutely cannot gamble on sports, period. End of story. But it gets so much worse, because it wasn't just that he was betting on random games. Sorsby was betting against his own team, against his own offense. Let that sink in for a second. The starting quarterback was placing bets that his team would lose, that his offense would underperform. The implications of that are absolutely staggering. It raises questions that nobody wants to ask. Was he trying to influence outcomes? Was he purposely playing poorly in certain situations? Now, there's no concrete evidence that he threw games or anything like that, but just the appearance of it, just the possibility, is enough to make NFL teams extremely nervous. When this scandal first broke, Sorsby tried to fight for NCAA eligibility to return to college football. There were legal battles, lawyers got involved. It was a complete mess. And when it became clear that the NCAA probably wasn't going to reinstate him, Sorsby and his team pivoted. They announced he would enter the NFL's supplemental draft instead. Now, for those of you who might not know exactly what a supplemental draft is, let me break it down real quick because it's important for understanding why today's news is such a big deal. The supplemental draft is basically a special draft that the NFL can choose to hold after the regular draft for players who weren't eligible for the main draft for whatever reason. Maybe they had eligibility issues. Maybe academic problems. Maybe something changed in their situation after the regular draft already happened. If the NFL decides to hold a supplemental draft, teams can bid on these players by offering up draft picks from the next year's draft. So if the Steelers wanted Sorsby in a supplemental draft, they might have to give up, let's say, a third-round pick in the 2027 draft to get him now. The higher the bid, the higher the pick you have to surrender. It's a gamble because you're trading future assets for an unknown commodity right now. And here's the thing. Supplemental drafts are rare, like really rare. According to Rappaport's report, the last time the NFL actually held a supplemental draft was back in 2023. And the last time a player was actually selected in one was all the way back in 2019. So we're talking about something that almost never happens. But with Sorsby being such a high-profile name, with legitimate NFL talent, a lot of people around the league were expecting the NFL to make an exception and hold one this year specifically for him. But the NFL just said, nope, not happening. We're not doing it. And when I tell you this decision sent shockwaves through the football world, I'm not exaggerating. Sorsby's attorney, Jeffrey Kessler, immediately fired back with a statement saying that the NFL's decision is a violation of the collective bargaining agreement and the law. He said they're going to pursue this immediately with the NFL Players Association. They're going to fight this. They're going to lawyer up and try to force the NFL's hand. But here's the problem with that strategy. And this is where it gets really interesting from a legal standpoint. Brendan Sorsby is not currently an NFL player. He's never been on an NFL roster. He's never signed an NFL contract. So how exactly is he covered by the NFL Players Association? How is he protected by the collective bargaining agreement between the league and the players' union when he's not actually a player yet? That's a massive hole in his legal argument right there. And even if you set that aside, the CBA is actually pretty clear about this. Article 6 of the Collective Bargaining Agreement explicitly states that in any league year in which the NFL deems it appropriate, there may also be a supplemental draft. Not shall, not must, may. That word gives the NFL complete discretion. They can choose to hold one or not hold one based on whatever criteria they want. It's entirely up to the league office. So Sorsby's legal team is going to have an incredibly difficult time arguing that the NFL violated any agreement when the agreement itself gives the league the power to make exactly this kind of decision. What the NFL is effectively doing here, and let's call it what it is suspending Brendan Sorsby for an entire year without actually calling it a suspension. They're keeping him out of the league for the entire 2026 season. Instead of letting a team draft him and then suspending him afterward for the gambling violations, which would be messy and complicated, they're just preventing him from entering the league in the first place. It's actually a pretty smart move from the NFL's perspective. This gives them a full calendar year to investigate everything that happened, to figure out the extent of the gambling, to determine if there's any evidence of game fixing or point shaving or anything else that would be an absolute nightmare for the integrity of the sport. And at the end of that year, they can decide whether they even want Brendan Sorsby in their league at all. Because make no mistake, what Sorsby did is serious. Really serious. The NFL has been absolutely paranoid about gambling ever since they opened the doors to legalized sports betting and partnerships with betting companies. They've suspended players for much less than what Sorsby allegedly did. Remember Calvin Ridley, the Falcons wide receiver who got suspended for an entire year for placing some bets while he was away from the team on a mental health break? He wasn't even accused of betting against his own team, and he still got a full season suspension. Now imagine what the NFL is thinking about a guy who allegedly bet against his own team, his own offense, while he was the starting quarterback. That's a completely different level of violation. So what does this mean for the Pittsburgh Steelers? And why should Steelers fans care about any of this? Well, over the past several weeks, there have been persistent rumors that the Steelers were doing their homework on Brendan Sorsby. Multiple reports suggested that Pittsburgh was at least considering making a move for him in the supplemental draft. And this actually made a lot of sense when you think about the Steelers' quarterback situation. ESPN draft analyst Todd McShay even went on record saying that the Steelers could consider giving up a first-round pick for Sorsby in the supplemental draft. Now, personally, I think that would have been absolutely insane. Way too much draft capital for a guy with this much baggage and this many question marks. And I don't think the Steelers would have actually pulled the trigger on something that aggressive. But the fact that it was even being discussed tells you that there was legitimate interest from some teams around the league. Let's think about why the Steelers might have been intrigued. Right now, their quarterback room consists of Aaron Rodgers, who everyone expects to retire after this season. He's on what is almost certainly his farewell tour. Then you've got Drew Aller, the young quarterback they just drafted, who's got potential but needs a lot of development. And Will Howard, another young guy they brought in who's fighting to make the roster. So, looking ahead to 2027, the Steelers are staring down a potential situation where they need a franchise quarterback, and they might not have one on the roster. From that perspective, taking a flyer on a talented guy like Sorsby in a supplemental draft, maybe spending a third or fourth round pick, could have made some sense as a low-risk, high-reward gamble. But here's why I don't think the Steelers were ever really serious about it. Number one, they just invested a draft pick in Drew Aller. That tells you they have a plan at the position. They're developing him. They believe in him. They want to give him time to learn behind Rodgers, work with Mike McCarthy, and hopefully emerge as the guy. Number two, the Steelers are reportedly pretty high on Will Howard. We'll see how he performs in training camp and the preseason, but the word out of Pittsburgh is that they like what they see from him. So they've got two young quarterbacks already in the building that they're trying to develop. And number three, and this might be the most important factor, the Steelers are the Rooney family. They care about character. They care about the type of people representing their organization. And I just cannot see the Rooneys, Art Rooney II, Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin. I cannot see them bringing in a guy with Sorsby's baggage, a guy who bet against his own team, who violated the trust of his coaches, his teammates, his university. The optics of that would be terrible. The message it would send to the locker room would be problematic. This is a franchise that prides itself on doing things the right way, and Sorsby just doesn't fit that profile, no matter how talented he might be. So while the Steelers might have done their due diligence, might have had him on their board, might have discussed it internally, I really don't believe they would have actually drafted him, even if the supplemental draft had happened. And now that it's not happening, it's a moot point anyway. Sorsby won't be joining any NFL team this year, including the Pittsburgh Steelers. But let's talk about what happens next. For Sorsby, this is obviously a massive setback. His attorney says they're going to fight it, but like we discussed, their legal options are pretty limited. The CBA gives the NFL broad authority here, and Sorsby isn't even part of the players' union yet, so it's hard to see how that legal challenge succeeds. He could try to fight for NCAA eligibility again, try to get back on the field in college football, but the fact that he was trying to jump to the NFL instead tells you that he and his team probably don't think they're going to win that battle either. So the most likely scenario is that Brendan Sorsby doesn't play football anywhere this year. Not in the NFL, not in college. Maybe he could try the Canadian Football League, which is already in the middle of their season, but that seems unlikely at this point. If I'm Sorsby's advisor, here's what I'm telling him. Use this year wisely. You're about to have 12 months with nothing to do but work on your game. Get with one of the elite quarterback coaches, Quincy Avery, Jordan Palmer, John Beck. These are the guys who work with top quarterback prospects preparing for the NFL draft. Spend every single day working on your fundamentals. Fix your footwork. Learn under-center mechanics, because most college quarterbacks play in shotgun spread systems and struggle with the under-center game when they get to the NFL study film. Get in the best shape of your life. Do everything you can to show up at the 2027 NFL Combine, assuming you get invited, and absolutely blow people away with your preparation and professionalism. Because here's the harsh reality. According to Dane Brugler from The Athletic, Sorsby wanted to come out in this year's draft, but NFL teams gave him feedback that he was probably a third-round pick. That was before all this gambling scandal stuff happened, before the legal battles, before he had to sit out an entire year. Now you add all that baggage on top of the talent evaluation, and his draft stock is going to take a serious hit. And to make matters worse for Sorsby, the 2027 quarterback class is shaping up to be absolutely loaded with talent. You're going to have guys like Dante Moore coming out, Lenora Sellers, Quinn Ewers from Texas. There are rumors that Arch Manning could come out if he has a big season, Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee, Julian Sayin, Jared Verse, DJ Lagway. The list goes on and on. This is supposed to be a really deep and really talented quarterback class at the top, which means Sorsby is going to be competing against a bunch of guys with better recent film, no legal baggage, and no year-long absence from football. That's a tough sell to NFL teams, especially ones looking for a franchise quarterback in the first or second round. My prediction? Sorsby becomes a day 3 pick at best. Maybe a late 4th rounder, more likely a 5th or 6th. Some team will take a flyer on him based on his physical tools and hope they can develop him. But the days of him being discussed as a potential 1st or 2nd round talent are probably over. The gambling scandal and everything that's happened since has just done too much damage to his reputation and his stock. Now, what about the Steelers moving forward? How do they handle the quarterback position from here? Like I said earlier, I don't think the Steelers were seriously planning on drafting Sorsby anyway, so this doesn't really change their plans. Everything proceeds as expected. Will Howard and Drew Aller are the young quarterback options in the room right now. We'll see if Howard makes the final roster. That's going to be a really interesting battle to watch in training camp and the preseason. Aller is definitely going to be on the roster, spending the year learning from Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. This is a crucial developmental year for him. He needs to fix some mechanical issues, improve his decision-making, get comfortable with NFL concepts and terminology. If the Steelers really believe he can be the guy, this year is all about setting him up for success in 2027. Then next spring, the Steelers are going to reassess everything. We're all expecting Aaron Rodgers to ride off into the sunset and retire. Will Howard or Drew Aller or both might get some playing time this season depending on how things go, and their performance will factor into the decision. The Steelers will evaluate where they're picking in the 2027 draft. They'll look at which quarterbacks are actually entering the draft and how they stack up. There are a lot of variables still in play. But absolutely, 100%, drafting a quarterback high in next year's draft is still very much on the table for Pittsburgh. It depends on where they're picking. It depends on which quarterbacks declare. And here's something really interesting to keep in mind. The Steelers might have an additional first-round pick next year if they end up trading Mike Tomlin to another team this offseason. That's been a hot topic of discussion lately. If that happens, if they get a first-round pick in return for Tomlin, that gives them even more ammunition to move up and get their guy if they need to. They've got options. They could roll with Drew Aller and make him the starter. They could go with Will Howard if he impresses. They could draft a quarterback high and let him compete. They could even bring in a veteran on a cheap deal if they want to go that route, though I think that's the least likely scenario after the Aaron Rodgers experiment. But when it comes specifically to Brendan Sorsby and the 2027 draft, I just don't see the Steelers having any interest. If they're going to use a high draft pick on a quarterback next year, they're going to want someone who can play right away, someone who can be the face of the franchise, someone with clean character and no red flags. Sorsby doesn't check those boxes. Between the gambling scandal, the year off from football, and the questionable decision-making, I think the Steelers are going to pass on him completely. And frankly, I think if Pittsburgh drafts a quarterback next year, it's going to be early in the draft, and it's going to be a guy they're absolutely convinced can be their franchise quarterback for the next decade. Not a mid-round project with baggage. So that's where we stand right now, Steelers Nation. The supplemental draft is not happening. Brendan Sorsby is not entering the NFL this year. The Steelers' plans at quarterback remain unchanged. Drew Aller continues to develop. Will Howard battles for a roster spot. Aaron Rodgers plays out what is probably his final season. And next spring, the real decisions begin about the future of the most important position in football for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I want to hear from you guys down in the comments. Do you think the Steelers draft a quarterback in the first round next year? Sitting here today in late June of 2026, what's your prediction? Are they going all in on Drew Aller? Are they trading up for one of the top quarterbacks in the class? Are they making a move we haven't even thought of yet? Drop your predictions in the comments and let's have that conversation. And honestly, I'm kind of glad we can move past the Brendan Sorsby saga. It's been a distraction. It's been a circus. And now we can focus on what really matters, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers getting ready for the 2026 season. Training camp is coming up fast. Real football is right around the corner. And if you want daily coverage of everything Steelers, if you want to be the first to know when the next big story breaks, you absolutely need to subscribe to this channel right now. We're bringing you content every single day. Breaking news, analysis, hot takes, everything you need to stay connected to your black and gold. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and become part of the family. Let's get ready for another season of Steelers football.